Today's review is for Army of the Dead, directed by Zack Snyder and starring Dave Bautista, Ella Purnell, Omari Hardwick, Ana de la Reguera, Theo Rossi, Matthias Schweighöfer, Nora Arnizadeh, Hiroyuki Sanada, Tig Notaro, Raul Castillo, Huma Qureshi, and Garrett Dillahunt, and is Zack Snyder's second zombie film since his 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead. And this film is set in an Earth where, after a zombie outbreak has occurred, a group of mercenaries are hired to engage in a massive heist in Las Vegas where all the zombies have been gathered and trapped to break into a vault where a huge stack of money is kept. And not only is it at the risk of being killed by savage reanimated corpses, but also a time limit because a nuke is about to be dropped in Vegas to eradicate the zombie horde. This is a movie that has been anticipated by a lot of people because of the fact that Zack Snyder directed it. And of course, a majority of those people consisted of a lot of DC fans, especially those who fought for Warner Brothers to release his version of Justice League, which just came out 2 months ago. So yeah, it gained a lot of popularity for that alone. Now, I actually do remember hearing about this movie being made back in 2019, a year before the Snyder Cut was announced. And while the trailer looked awesome, and I wasn't against seeing it, I wasn't exactly sure about seeing it to review it on its premiere date exactly. But recently, I heard Zack himself actually saying that even though Warner Brothers gave him permission to, and while he was finishing Justice League, they still weren't being very nice to him. And they also, for some reason, still won't learn from their mistakes and rehire Ray Fisher after being so cruel to him as well. And of course, for some reason, won't just have the Snyder Cut be the true Justice League and re-greenlight the Justice League sequels. For some reason, they're still sticking to that 2017 Parasite, despite how much of a bomb it is.
What's the matter with you?
So basically what I'm saying is, I decided to review it to show support for Zack Snyder, because he's not only a good director, but also a great guy in general. And also because, sure, it did look pretty cool. And after finally seeing it, I will say that Army of the Dead is pretty serviceable as both a zombie movie and a heist movie in one. While I wouldn't particularly call it one of Zack's best movies, it does have some problems. I did find myself really enjoying it for just being a fun, action-packed, gory, visually pleasing, and over-the-top zombie flick that I'm sure that maybe even the likes of George A. Romero would have enjoyed. And part of that is because most of the main characters are, for the most part, pretty likable. Like our main character, Scott Ward, played by Bautista. For the most part, he's basically the easy-to-love, beefy, badass fighter, but he does also have a nice layer of depth to him. He's not only a mercenary, but also a protective father and a cook who has this kind of amusing little trait where he keeps on suggesting themes for food trucks to his daughter, Kate. And of course, for the most part, he's easy to root for because, again, he's a badass fighter, but also because he does have a tragic past, where he had to kill his wife because she was, of course, infected with the zombie virus. But I also found myself really caring for him as just a guy who wanted to keep his daughter out of danger. Now, I'll get into this later, but even though I'm not exactly fond of his daughter, I did appreciate him just trying to keep his daughter safe. It made me care for him as a father character. Especially to a point where I actually was a bit sad when he died in the end. I mean, yeah, sure, it seemed a bit cliche how they did the whole, oh no, you're gonna turn into a zombie and now I have to shoot you, but I love you, goodbye. Yeah, that's been done a lot in zombie movies, but I'm sure it can still work even today if you at least if you care about the character. And in this case, I definitely did. It also helps that Dave Bautista was really great in the role. In fact, I might actually say that this is probably my third favorite performance by the guy. Mostly because it shows that he really does have a lot of range as an actor. Most people will know him as Drax in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where he's the brawn, non-metaphor understanding, comedic alien dude. But here, he's like a grizzled KGB-style motherfucker that could likely kill you easily just by holding you by the neck in the air. So yeah, I like Scott as a character, and I think Dave Bautista did a great job playing him. The other characters I like too, such as Lily, aka the Coyote, played by Nora Arnizadeh. She's a pretty cunning and badass bae who I definitely wouldn't want to mess with. There's also Maria, played by Reguera, because she definitely seemed like a really good friend to Scott, and I actually did feel sad when she got killed, especially because her death was really fucking brutal. Like, geez, that must have sucked. But I think my favorite human character in the whole team would have to be Ludwig, played by Matthias Schweighöfer, a safecracker they hire to unlock the vault holding all the money they're after. And I think he works pretty well as a comic relief character. He's this really nerdy, exaggerated guy who's definitely the most scared out of the whole team. And he does a great job of giving some great humor to lighten the mood sometimes. Heck, he even forms this kind of fun little friendship with Omar Hardwick's character, Vandero. Like, while their interactions are short, they still manage to feel like two completely different guys becoming buddies, and it's pretty amusing. And it was actually really sad when Ludwig died, especially since he died saving Vander. Although, it is kind of just plain sad now, since in the end it turns out to be in vain because, yeah, apparently Vander, he was bitten, so unless he kills himself or gets someone to kill him, he's gonna fuck the world over. But yeah, Ludwig is definitely my favorite human character in the film, as he provided enough of the film's biggest highlights. The action is also pretty damn awesome, as to be expected. Like, in terms of action-packed zombie killing fun, this film definitely delivers. Whether it's a shootout in a casino, or even a hand-to-hand fight with a zombie, it's pretty intense and entertaining. Like, for example, there's a scene in the movie where our characters are trying to get past a crowd of zombies that are sleeping, like they're in hibernation. And if they're not careful, they'll wake up and go into a frenzy. And yeah, it's a pretty intense sequence, and it gives a great sense of extreme caution. It's definitely one of those scenes that just make you go, careful, 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 careful. And then, of course, when they wake up, you're like, oh shit. And it's another great example of how brilliantly Zack Snyder can direct a scene. That whole sequence was just chilling. Also, by the way, there's something I just found out as I was gathering images for this video that I just found really insanely impressive. Marianne, played by Tig Notaro, apparently she was actually digitally added to the film. Yeah, you see, originally her character was played by Chris D'Elia, but after news about his allegations got out, Snyder edited him out and replaced him with Tig, whom he filmed on green screens. And I was surprised to learn this because I didn't realize until finding this out. For real, they did a really good job at making it not only seem like she was there, but they also managed to do a good job at making her interactions with the characters seem consistent, even though I'm pretty sure from what I looked into, she wasn't even on set with any of the cast. That's amazing. But of course, the best part of this movie is, of course, the zombies, the titular army of the dead. And I gotta say, I think Zack may have very well made zombies scary again. Like, seriously, the way the zombies are portrayed in this movie is amazing. Like, even though we do get some of the predictable Romero-style zombies in the form of the Shamblers, we also get smarter, faster, and even coordinated zombies in the form of the Alphas. These zombies were genuinely terrifying. Like, for real, whenever they were close to one of the main characters, I actually got scared. Like, they actually felt like savage monsters, and not just slow-walking reanimated boomers. Like, they actually gave an aura of fear. Like, seriously, if zombies were actually a thing, and this was like an 100% accurate depiction of them, I would be in constant pale-facing fear if they were anywhere near where I lived. And this leads me to what is hands down my favorite part of this entire movie. The main antagonist, the Alpha King, played by a man named Richard Citrone, who was also Ben Affleck's Batman stunt double in BVS. And fun fact for any Star Wars fans watching, also physically played Darth Vader in the reimagined A New Hope Vader Obi-Wan fight scene. And I have to be honest, I think this guy might very well be one of my new favorite movie villains of all time. Because he's just such a terrifying antagonist. He's the original, the one who bit first, the one in charge, the one with the queen, the alpha, the one you really, and not only want, but need to avoid at all costs. You know what I'm getting at. This guy was straight up the Darth Vader of this entire movie. In fact, he felt less like just a zombie, and more like a Mad Max villain if they were a reanimated corpse. Not only was he scary and fear-inducing, but he's also a badass. Like, he carries around a spear, leads zombies like a knight leading an army into war, wears a metal mask to protect himself. He's that smart. And he even rides a zombie horse. That is awesome! And also, by the way, surprisingly enough, they even at one point kind of make you feel sympathy for him, almost, with this scene where he finds his queen's beheaded body, and then he opens her up, and he's holding an embryo, like what would have been a zombie baby, confirming that earlier scene where he put his ear to her belly, yeah, she was pregnant. And Martin basically murdered their child in the process. And while I didn't cry for him, I did at least go, oh. For real, I never thought that I would actually almost feel sorry for a zombie in a zombie movie like this. And that's something I have to commend not only Zach for, but also Richard Cetrone. Like seriously, for a stuntman, he gives an amazing performance as the Alpha. He plays him with such an inhuman and beast-like personality, and gave a fantastic aura of ferocity to a point where, if you ask me, he was the one carrying this movie. He's my favorite part of it. And again, he may very well be one of my new favorite movie villains. I gotta praise Zach and Richard for bringing this beast of a villain to life. He's such an incredible antagonist. Now, as for issues, I do have a few. First of all, if you were to ask me if I had a least favorite character, excluding the asshole characters of Martin and Cummings, I definitely do. And that character is Kate, Scott's daughter, played by Ella Purnell, whom I have some very mixed feelings about. Basically, her whole reason for coming on this mission into the quarantine zone with our characters is because she works at a refugee camp that's around Vegas, and she made friends with this woman named Greta, who has 2 kids. And at one point, she finds out that Lily escorted her into the zombie-infested town. So, of course, she insists on going in with them to save her. Now, that motivation sounds okay enough, and I definitely understand why she felt the need to do it. But at the same time, it honestly made it very hard for me to root for her in this case. Why? Because, in a way, her ultimate goal is kind of responsible for quite a few of the main characters' deaths, including her father. Like, she runs off at one point after everyone finally manages to unlock the vault with just a handgun, and as our remaining characters try to go after her, they all keep dying in the process. I mean, yeah, a few of the characters likely would have still died even if she didn't, but still, somehow, in a way, it kind of indirectly makes her selfless goal somehow feel selfish, which is something I never want to think when someone is trying to make a selfless act. And it also doesn't help that Gita, forget that earlier I called her Greta, sorry about that, may have very possibly died in the helicopter crash, rendering Kate's whole reason for coming totally pointless in the end. So, yeah, Kate is definitely not my favorite member of the group. Sure, Cummings and Martin are worse because, well, they're both just assholes. But Kate, honestly, she went about her entire goal in a stupidly reckless way, and it still doesn't help that in the end, again, it ends up being pointless right at the point where it would have been worth it. And if anything, it just makes me feel more sad for Gita's kids than Kate, if I'm being honest. Another issue with the film is that there are certain things that are briefly established as something of interest that you'd think would be built upon later on in the story, but they never get a payoff. Like, for example, there's a brief visual implication that some of the zombies might actually be cyborgs. Some people have pointed out that at one point in the casino battle near the end, you can actually see that one of the zombies that gets shot, particularly this one by Raul Castillo's character Mikey, has blue glowing eyes and a robotic looking skull, very much implying that there are cyborg zombies. But this one shot is literally the only direct attention we get to that apparent fact. It's never brought up by any of the characters, nobody seems to care, it's just something that happens to be there. Another example is that there's this scene where Vanderoe, Ludwig, and Mikey enter the room where the vault is, and they find corpses of what appear to be another team of grave robbers. And Vander has this kind of interesting little talk about how these corpses could actually be themselves, and about how they could all be pawns in some kind of a time loop. But this whole time loop mentality never gets brought up again, ever. So again, I don't understand why you would bring that up. And there's also this bit where, as our team is first entering Vegas, we see a bunch of dried up immobile shamblers. And it's mentioned briefly that if it rains, they'll come back to life. Which sounds cool, But guess what? Yet never happens. It never rains. So why give us this information when you're not going to do anything with it? Such a tease. There was also other things too, like in the background of the beginning of the movie, you could see a UFO or something. And there was also a discussion about aliens by these two military guys in the beginning. You get the idea. But basically, this film has a strange habit of visually and verbally establishing some interesting little things, but never gives any of them a payoff for some reason. It's not like in Knives Out, where there was a clever setup by Harlan where he said that Hugh can't tell the difference between a real or a fake knife. And at the end, where Hugh tries to kill Marta with a knife, it turns out that the knife he grabbed was a prop. And that worked because it was a payoff to something that was set up earlier in the story. But here, there are a lot of little things that never get a payoff, which is just really disappointing in my eyes. If it's not important, don't include it. Simple as that, no matter how cool it may seem. And finally, this one may seem like a nitpick, but it's just something that I got a tiny bit annoyed by after a while. And it's the amount of blur in this movie. This movie uses a lot of blur shots in certain scenes. And after a while, it gets pretty old and even a little bit annoying. It's not enough to make me dislike the film, but some of it felt really unnecessary. Now, Zack did do something similar in Justice League, where in the nightmare scene with Batman and Joker, there was a lot of blur in Joker's close-up face shots. But there, in my opinion, it worked because it was to show Bruce focusing on the card Joker was about to give him, and then it shifts his focus onto Joker as he makes a final gloat about killing Robin. And to me, it worked pretty well there in that case. And to be fair, it's not like it doesn't work at all in this movie, because to be fair, there is one big scene where it does work very well, and that's the scene where we first meet the Alpha Queen. It was pretty effective. But other times, it would have been better if it wasn't blurred so much. But that's just me. So, yeah, while Army of the Dead isn't one of Zack's best movies, especially not this year, Justice League was definitely better, as was Dawn of the Dead, but it still was an enjoyable film. It had some likable leads, some awesome action sequences, a good score by Junkie XL, gave us some of the most terrifying zombies I've ever seen, including an incredible villain in form of the Alpha King, some cool ideas even though they don't build on them. Like seriously, robot zombies, that should be a movie in and of itself. I'd pay $50 to see that. And also, it was pretty funny at times. Again, I'm not fond of Kate. I wish they had more payoffs to some of the stuff they set up, especially the rain zombies. A lot of the blur is unnecessary, but in the end, I enjoyed it. It's a dumb, fun movie with an on-paper ridiculous premise, and it works enough to warrant a good watch. I definitely recommend it if you're a big fan of zombie movies. And even with my criticisms, I'm still in full support of Zack Snyder. I support Restore the Snyderverse, and if he makes a sequel to this movie, sure, I'll consider seeing it and maybe reviewing it. And also, let me just say right now that whenever I go to see any of the upcoming DC movies like The Suicide Squad or Black Adam, that's not going to be me supporting Walter Hamada or Jeff Johns or Toby Emmerich, but rather me supporting the great filmmakers behind those films. Just saying. I'm going to give Army of the Dead a 6 out of 10. And also, by the way, I just want to take a moment to say that I'm dedicating today's review to digital artist Brian Fialos, aka Brian Zapp. He was a really talented fan artist, one of whom even got me into making my own fan-made posters, and like all of us, was a big supporter of Zack. He will be missed, and my condolences go out to his family and friends. Rest in peace, Zapp. Hopefully you'll be able to see Halloween Kills from the heavens. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I'll see you next time, and peace out.